welcome everybody. It's so lovely to have you here. I really love this tiny desk concert vibe. It feels very intimate, I feel very close with you all. Thank you so much for joining us at our first Roots Into ... event. And of course, this is our first event focused on roots into filmmaking, which is why we are at the brilliant one and only HALAL. I know that HALAL needs no introduction, but I'm going to try and give it one anyway, no pressure, with Kai sat next to me. So HALAL is a renowned production company and photography agency known for redefining moments of popular culture with a radical storytelling approach. So their clients include Patta, Nike, Ace and Tate, Daily Paper, and they cover everything from photography to fiction to documentaries and commercial. How did you do?
Pretty good.
Yeah? I'm sure you can beef it up later as well. So now that we know where we are and why it's so appropriate for us to be here today in this building, I want to tell you a little bit more about Roots In, the organization behind this event. So Roots In exists to create awareness and access, or Roots In, to the creative industry for underrepresented young talent. And one of the ways that we love to do that is by matching those who have made it with those who are on their way. And of course, that's kind of what we're doing here today in this event. We're showing and demystifying, uncovering some of the career paths and routes that you can take to break into an industry like the film industry. And to do that, we're hearing from the career paths, the roots in, stories from 3 different professionals in this industry, which gives me the perfect opportunity to invite each of you to introduce yourselves. So I'd love to hear your name, your role, and maybe one little line about yourself. Oot, maybe you want to start.
Yeah, hi, I'm Oot. I'm a documentary maker, filmmaker, and photographer. And that's it.
Thank you. You're going to tell a lot more about yourself very soon.
Yeah, later.
I'm Tiwi Rai. I'm from London. I've been living here for almost 6 years, and I'm a producer across film and sometimes photography.
Thank you very much.
I'm Gijs. I started part of this company where we're here, and I'm a producer. Yeah. Not a director.
Thank you very much. And I'm Emily Hinks. I'm one of the founders of Roots In, and I'm your very happy host for today's session. So I'm going to kick us straight off with a little bit of a warm-up question to get us going. And that question is, what was your first ever job? So your first ever job, as in like the first thing that you were paid to do. Maybe you want to start us off.
Yeah, so I started burger flipping at Burger King at Central Station when I was 15. And I really enjoyed it. But I got sacked because I was eating the chickens all the time. Yeah, but I loved it. So still love burger flipping though, yeah.
Yeah, very nice, thank you.
Not too dissimilar from OT, my first job was McDonald's.
Yeah,
when I was 16 years old. And yeah, I would work there after college.
Maybe there's something to be said from fast food to film.
Yeah, exactly.
What about you guys?
I was a dishwasher in a Chinese restaurant, which was interesting. I was the only not Chinese person working there.
Okay.
And there was a layer of grease this much on my water, and if I stuck my hand in, it was orange completely.
Oh, so you came back stained. But I think we were talking about this, we met to prepare a little bit about this event, and actually those early jobs, the first jobs through to the first ones that we like, teach us so much already. You earn some of those, like that service-minded approach, or how to work with others. So it's always important to think about where we did start. And we're going to start now with hearing a little bit about each of your roots in. And so, you know, audience, we did give our wonderful panelists some homework. And that homework was to visualize their route in, to be able to share the path that's brought them to where they are now. And a prerequisite as well, we said it is about being able to tell that story. So no judgment on the style or how these turned out, even though I'm very excited to see what they're like and how different they are as well. So, Oat, maybe you want to kick us off.
So basically what I did, for myself, I just collected some images that represent a little moment in time that really shaped my route. Top is me with my first handycam. I believe it's in Marrakesh. I'm an autodidact. I never really finished the education properly. And I'm really like a wanderer. So when I started creating, or when I figured out that I wanted to capture a lot of things, was when I moved to Berlin. And I was so amazed by the things I saw outside that I just got a little camera and started collecting all the things that I saw, where I felt like, wow, this is so beautiful to see. For the first time I saw things in Amsterdam or the Netherlands, things can be quite structured. And in Berlin, where I was living at the time was 2012, it was pretty wild. And I saw so much different forms of beauty and opportunity that I just really got so, how do you say, invited by life to just start capture it. And that's also the picture underneath. It's one of my first pictures actually, in Berlin with a guy with a bass player. It's in the subway. And this is also a nice moment because it really reminded me to, when I was capturing the outside, that way of success was so, how do you say, is so relative, you know? So yeah, I moved to Berlin, met my friends there, Chris Liete, Otte, and then I started the duo Otte and I. And then underneath we see Amsterdam. I moved back to Amsterdam after 5 years because Berlin was wild, and I started a documentary project here, which I'm still doing. So basically my entire route consists of always creating and being fascinated. Like, I didn't really have a network, I didn't know nobody, and the only thing I did and what I had to offer was my fascination. So I went out, got a camera, and just started creating, never really stopped. Also, I got a first cool job that lasted a few years, and it's a funny one because we see a little bum. It was for an escort club, a high-end escort club, and they needed somebody to portray the girls, but in a comfortable way. And of course, I said, "Hey, this is me." And for over 2 or 3 years, I captured the portfolios of the ladies, of course. And tried to make them beautiful. Again, we come back to the essence, like always trying to capture things, make things beautiful. Yeah, so and that was how I learned photography, flash photography. And then right up, it's OTA. It's a beautiful project. I've been working on it for 7 years. It's almost done. It's very dear to me. And it's about the ballroom culture here in the Netherlands mainly. And I started capturing, finding my friends on a... When I started doing the videography and film, people also in the queer scene asked me to do, since I'm queer, to capture them. And I was doing an aftermovie for Super Bowl, which is a big drag event here in the Netherlands back in 2016, 17 or something. And I met Amber Vineyard. They just started the first ballroom house. And that's when I came into a world of finding myself, but also being raised by culture in our society, where I felt there was so much lacking. And then coming back to the root in, this really, how to say, ignited me to really get out there and get things straight, because I felt like, whoa, shit, we're so much misunderstood, you know? So from a feeling, and I always had this feeling, actually, I just felt really, I was kind of confused, but also very much in awe of all the beautiful things I saw. And by taking the camera, I just, you know, tried to make any sense out of it, which then resulted in this. So this is OTA, that's really, really important to me. And then of course, like Gijs also, the nightlife, social, culture, people, just like be at places and talk was really important to me. And then through that piece of work, I came here with Olivia, through Gijs, and I started doing commercial work, and now I also do stuff in New York. So yeah, for me, my route in was really about just creating and keeping on creating, and yeah, that's about it. And of course, I'm just starting, so there's lots gonna happen in the future, but I'm very grateful, of course, to the guys from HALAL to give me this opportunity and this chance, because it was not a normal route in, but one filled with passion already, and very eager to see the future, so yeah.
Thank you.
Welcome.
So I've got a question.
Yeah.
It seems really clear that you were really compelled and driven and committed to like that fascination and that compulsion to create.
To understand also. It's translation, I always think. And now it's starting to expand in my fantasy as well. Yeah. More ideas for fiction, but also this documentary projects we're working on. It's going to be so amazing, and it's really about empowerment. I'm so done with stigmatization. I just want to show what I feel powerful and people overcoming themselves. And I feel fed up that we're being made small, you know. So besides doing commercial, I also feel like I really have a purpose here, and I always get goosebumps when I talk about it.
Yeah,
I'm
I
just
think we
here
can
to,
all get goosebumps from it. Like
Hey, I'm just here to
it's coming through.
celebrate. You know?
Yeah. Okay, amazing.
Everybody.
So that passion is very clearly there and driven you. I want to understand, were there any kind of like hard choices you had
Yes.
to make to allow you to do this? Okay, can you tell us?
Yeah, for sure. So in the beginning, of course, nobody's paying for your art, so I did a lot of dishwashing, but I did it happily. Like I never, when you ask, so what's the first job you liked? And then I was thinking like, whoa, I like all my jobs, because when I'm not working with my passion, or when I was doing dishwashing or when I'm burger flipping, I'm just watching people and I'm just thinking like, oh, what beautiful, you know, or what can we create, or I don't agree, and how are we gonna counter that, you know, there's always something happening. And when you're not in high, how do you say, when you're not like intensely working on a certain project, or maybe on paper making a progress in your career, you still have the time to, how do you say, incubatie, like process things that you feel, things that you see, and then translate them into your art or into other projects. So yeah, and what a hard decision is then to accept that sometimes you're lonely, that sometimes you don't fit in, or that sometimes your lifestyle is not successful or profitable, or the artist one, you know. But as long as you accept that, I think acceptance is really important. But yeah, or moving alone to Berlin, I didn't know anyone, you know. It's been sometimes pretty lonely, but
Yeah.
or misunderstood. But I'm also very grateful when I look now, like, you know, just,
Where it's brought you.
yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah. TV, if you would like to share your visualization, I love this.
I struggled a bit, but I think the way I wanted to illustrate it is that my career has been a series of revolving doors and conversations, and that the pathway hasn't always been clear or gone to plan. And so for me, it first started with my A-levels. It's like what you do when you're 17, 18 before you go to university, and it dictates what level of university you can go to. I had planned to be a psychologist, but I got distracted by a boy and failed everything. And so I couldn't go to my university of choice, and I didn't have high enough grades to get the accreditation to be like a top level psychologist. And so then it was like, shit, what am I going to do? Couldn't tell my mum, couldn't tell my dad. And so it's the first time where I learned that I had to pivot and go a different route. I had an aunt who was a fashion designer, and she had explained that like you were always into developing product, you loved reading the magazines, and there are jobs in fashion. And so I kind of turned a corner and ended up going to a different type of university and studying business for retail and fashion. And that's the first door that takes me into my first career as a fashion buyer and product developer, doing denim for brands. And it was the first job where, I don't know, like you're with a team of people, you're creating stuff for people your age, your work is out in the public, you're seeing actors and fashion people out in your product, you're opening magazines, and it was great. And it was fun. And there was a random moment, probably 8 years into that, where a friend had said, hey, you have a lot of clothes and you have a lot of contacts, and I have a music video and we need clothing. Can you style it? And it was really just like, I'm not a stylist, but I have all of this stuff. But I just said yes. And that's the first time I went to a set. I was like, oh, this is someone's job. Like, this is, you know, I'd seen MTV, but I never really translated it into like, oh, there are people on a set in all different functions doing something. And the guy who had asked me was a producer. I knew nothing about his job, but I just saw him on set. I was like, I want your job. And he was like, well, okay, call my company and go and see. And so I called his company and they said, oh, come and do 2 weeks work experience. At this point, I'm 29, I've got a mortgage, I've got a career.
Wow.
But I took 2 weeks holiday from work. I went into a company called Partisan, and the first thing I was doing was an 8-day shoot for the London Olympics with Usain Bolt. And I was personally Usain Bolt's runner, which means I was running around town.
You were Usain Bolt's runner.
I was Usain Bolt's runner. And I had to find jerk chicken and Skittles every day, no matter where we were. But the point is, I was on a set, there were helicopters, there were it was just, it was incredible, and I loved the energy. And I took a risk and I quit my job. I moved out of my apartment, I went back to my mum's, and I started again. And so I'm a runner now at 30, not earning any money. I'm sitting with people that have just left university. But I was so excited that it felt fine. And within a year, I was a PA and then a PM, and my career went that way. So that was kind of like the first risk I took, and that's how I got my route in to production. And then the next door I took is that I was born and bred in London, had stayed in London my whole life, and I wanted somewhere new. I'd come to Amsterdam for a couple of like weekends and felt that energy, and I was like, I could live here, but I didn't know how to get a job here. And so for 2 years, I would come back and forth and try and have meetings. One of those meetings was with Heis.
It's not a good meeting.
Well, no, it wasn't actually. I think it was Ravi who emailed you to say meet Tiwi.
Yeah.
And then Heis was like, yeah, fine. I get there. Heis is too busy. He leaves and says, meet Christine, I think her name was. Anyway, I was told, because I didn't speak Dutch, that it was going to be impossible for me to work. And they weren't the only company that said that. And basically, after like 2 years of kind of not finding a window, not finding an opportunity, I decided to move here anyway. And I moved to Amsterdam without a job, with an Airbnb for 2 weeks and no plan.
Oh, love it.
But within 4 months, I got tagged into a Facebook post. And yeah, someone was like, we need a producer who also has fashion experience. And then I got my first job here. And that has kind of continued to go on for like 5 years. And I don't really know how we got back here to halal, but I wanted to raise it because sometimes you will hear no, but that's not the end of a conversation. Sometimes that's the starting point of a conversation. And it's really interesting to me that there was a no, but now I make the biggest commercials for this company. And so keep the conversation open, keep the door open. And sometimes it's just about timing.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tiwi. Thank you so much. Such a beautiful and winding, and like you said, those pivots and those brave decisions. I think that's from all of you. I suspect we're going to hear here as well. And I love that there's these key people through, even from starting with your auntie saying, "Hey, you've always loved the magazines. You've always looked here," and then this guy on the set. There's these people along the way that have influenced your route. Can you maybe speak a bit to that? Yeah. Because also it sounds like you've been asking these, that's the thing that I'm kind of seeing, you go and ask that guy, hey, I want your job.
Yeah, you take the opportunity, be curious, don't be afraid to hear no's. If you're curious and if you ask questions, doors open, and you can open that door and you can look into it, but you can also reverse and U-turn and turn another direction. But it all comes with learning and education, and sometimes you find that a choice you didn't make 5 years ago leads to the thing that you're doing 5 years later. So yeah, I would just say talk to people, be kind, be curious, and say yes and take risks. And that failing is really, they're all experiments. And I think you learn from every experiment you do. So don't be disheartened if your first attempt at things don't work out, because things always work out in the end.
Yeah, I really agree, yeah.
And I think it's so nice that there are conventional routes in. I think actually, interestingly, that's the rarest type often I've heard in the creative industry. And non-conventional, I mean, in that you really switched and changed careers. Like you said, you were being a runner at 29. Yeah. And that's just a case to anyone that is looking to break in. You can always switch and change.
Always. And you can always take the skill set that you had. Being a product developer is the same as being a producer. You're starting with the essence of something, you're building a team to put it together, and then you're delivering it. Okay, I didn't understand the mechanics of filmmaking, but I understood the mechanics of putting something together, and that transitioned and translated into the next thing.
Yeah, those transferable skills. Yeah. Thank you so much, Tiwi.
You're welcome.
So good to hear. And Gijs?
When I was 18, so I was super, super naive. There was no internet yet. I didn't have role models that worked in film, fashion, photography. My parents don't come from that area. I grew up in Haarlem, which is also not a super exciting city. So I knew nothing. I didn't know my job existed. I thought a film was made by a director and a camera person. And that's it. Kind of similar to what you said. So, but I did have to go to university, and I just went through all the guides, and then I saw film and television studies. I was like, oh, I love to watch TV. So, so that kind of is now called media and culture.
And
so I
here
thought,
we are.
so I thought, and then I looked in the curriculum and they really sold it. They were like, okay, you watch films 20 hours a week. And I was like, oh my God, sign me up. Media and culture in the Netherlands, of course, in the university studying film, you don't actually learn how to make film. If you study a language, you don't actually learn how to speak the language. It's quite, it's kind of a mindfuck. So I could do, at some point I had a chance to do an exchange with a school in New York. This was my big break because I paid tuition in the Netherlands and I could study in New York. And as you all know, that's super expensive. It was also the first time in my life that I borrowed money from the bank, which I was still paying off until 5 years ago, I think, to live there. And the school that I went to, it's part of that school is called Parsons School for Design. It's a really good art school, and I was just taking any class I could. I did everything, and I was so hungry, and for the first time in my life, I actually made something, and this is the time that new media came up. So it was like I was making CD-ROMs. Anybody know what a CD-ROM is? And it was like I was just making things. I started to learn how to program, how to do animation, Photoshop, Illustrator, all these things. In one of the classes, there was a woman, Tara Watson, and she heard that I could program, and I totally bluffed because I couldn't program. And she offered me an internship. So I was working at this company, Supernova. My biggest learning is positive bluff. It's like, don't pretend that you can do things that you can't do, but also don't let it stop you. This was the BLVD, which was a magazine which was really big back then, and I was in it as the biggest web talent of the Netherlands, which was total bullshit. but I was like, oh, he's like a web designer in New York. He must be really big, and I had really no idea.
I'll take it.
So anyway, and they, the internship gave me a job, so I could work there as interaction designer. But after a couple of years, I was like, I'm not a programmer. I don't want to sit behind my computer all the time. And I actually studied film, or at least something in the direction of film. So very similar to you, relatively late in my career, I made a switch because I already had. I had like a little studio with a couple of friends. We were making some money, and then I went to work on film set. And I worked on this really dumb TV show called Meiden van de Wit, which nobody knows anymore. And I was a runner. I was just driving a car from 6 in the morning till 12 at night, picking up actors everywhere, etc. And I loved it. I really, really loved the energy on the set. And there also I saw a guy, this is Milo. He was the first AD. I heard he was gonna work on a film called Pluk van de Pettenflat. So I just heard it at the lunch table. And Pluk van de Pettenflat is a very famous Dutch book. And I thought like, okay, if they're gonna make a film of that, that's probably gonna be epic. So I said to him, please take me as your assistant. And he was like, sure, but it's probably gonna be an internship role. And you're probably only gonna make 250 euros a month. And luckily I had a girlfriend back then that said like, yeah, you should totally go for this, and so I went back when I was 26 or 27 to, making 250 euros a month because I thought I really needed to take that opportunity. And this guy really unfortunately he died 2 years ago, which is really sad, but he really gave me that chance, and he fought for me for 2 years to come along. And also what he did, at some point he faked being sick so that I was on the set and I had to run an entire set. And it was in Germany, and I had to do it in German, and I don't speak German. So, and I had written on my hand sound, camera, action, because I didn't know if you had to say camera first or sound first, because I didn't know. So I was like, and halfway through the day, of course, it disappeared because I had such sweaty head. And it was horrible. So so then I started doing some small jobs as a first AD, and so my next route in is actually a company called Shooting Star. They were in this building where we are now, so that's it's quite funny. They asked me to do a short film. It was shot during the marathon. And it was actually about marathon runners during the marathon, and we had fake runners running in the marathon, then jumping over borders, and it was such chaos, but the director and the producer thought like, okay, if this young kid can organize a shoot during the marathon, then he probably has talent. And they gave me the opportunity to do my first feature film as a first AD. So, I mean, I was only 29, so I wasn't that young, but in my career, of course, I was super young because I was only working in film for maybe 2 or 3 years. So Dave Schram and Maria Peters, that also still own this company, they really like our film mommy and daddy, and they like, yeah, they just love film. So fatherhood fucked up everything because you cannot work in film. It's very hard to work in film when you're a single dad. Then I started doing more short films, and at some point I met the people from 100% Halal. I started producing commercials. I had never produced a commercial. I was the first AD, and I thought like, okay, how hard can it be? Yeah, that's also what I wrote there. 4 years. There was suffering. Because I was working before as the first AD, and you're making like a couple hundred a day as a freelancer, you do it every day. And then I started a company, and we paid ourselves 1,500 euros a month for the first 5-6 years. And I already had a kid, already had a house, not from a rich family. We put every money from the first music video and the second music video and the third music video and the fourth music video and the 200th music video, etc. And yeah, that's now 13 years ago. So
the true side of entrepreneurship.
Yeah. That's it.
Wow, amazing.
Yeah.
A really cool story to hear. I have loads more questions I want to ask you, but I also want to make sure that we invite the audience to ask questions. So the one last question I do want to ask you all is, when we're talking about roots in and career paths, do you think there are things that are specific about film industry career paths that you've noticed, or that you would want to, like, either from hearing each other's career paths or from your own? Is there any like industry specific things to bear in mind when you're navigating this career? Yeah, go for it.
No, I mean, I wait. There is not one way, but I think the takeouts from what I just said is like, it can literally be that you're at the lunch table and you hear people speaking about something like that project, like Pluk van de Pettenflat, that I thought like, okay, I want to be a part of that, and then fight for it. It's also like, yeah, hearing no, exactly like what Tiwi said, back then, Halal, like we weren't able to, you know, we were maybe doing one English spoken commercial every 3 months or something, so it wasn't like the moment to hire like full-time, even though I wanted to, you know, like would do that kind of work. We didn't actually have that kind of work. Then a couple of years later we did have a lot of that work, and then we already knew each other, you know, and we also always stayed in touch. So it's like film is very much about like
a people's industry.
Yeah, but really like leave your ego at the door. And as a director, that's super hard. I know so many young directors that also condemn other directors for doing specific jobs, like, oh, that's so whack, or that's like this, and you're like, yeah, but they're just working, and it's just experience, and don't be afraid that, you know, doing a music video for an artist that's not cool, or commercial for something that's not cool, that's gonna hold you back, because it's actually going to bring you forward, because on that set you're going to meet a first AD that brings you to a cool project, or just experience. Yeah.
And I think following on from what Hai said, like sometimes talent isn't enough. Like you can be really talented, but personality and likability counts. Like I would never work with someone who made the process so difficult or so challenging that the experience wasn't great. So just always keep that in mind, that you can have the talent, but you also have to, it's about managing people and being received well and listening and being open to learning. Like it doesn't matter how many years you do something on every single job, you're always going to learn something new, and you won't know everything. And it's okay to say, hey, I actually don't understand that. Can you explain more? Or like, can I learn about X because I've never done it before? So be open.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think it's really important, or at least how I experience, to be really flexible, but also to be really sure, like besides your own vision, really collaborate. We're creating this together. It's very, how do you say, energetic process. I would say the set also, and it needs to be a safe place where everybody feels free to share their talents. Because this is also for me a turning point when I started collaborating with bigger crews, is where I really actually was excited to listen to people who have their own, like, right, whether it's a stylist, art, or whatever, or for instance, producers who tell you what's possible and not. It's a learning process. It's beautiful to share and very important for the outcome, I believe.
Yeah, it's a team sport.
Yes, love that.
Yeah, it's a very good question. Thank you for asking that. I think the biggest mental challenge is like if you're, how do you call this syndrome? Imposter syndrome. Like if you're up for it, because I'm so self-taught, like, and you don't have the education. We live in this society. This I think mentally sometimes triggers you, but then the passion kicks in, and then if you have a good crew, so that's why I'm so grateful with HALAL people like Gijs, is to be honest and transparent. I think also what Tiwi just said. If you ever have, like, if you don't know something, if you don't know what's normal because we come from a different background or we are self-taught, whatever, just ask the questions to the crew. Everybody's here to create, and remember that everybody's here to create the best based out of the idea. And I think once you win the pitch or you're on the job, then everybody's there to support you, you know, and keep that in mind.
Yeah, if I can add to that, like, the unique selling point of Old was also the fact that they had never done a commercial yet. So I went to the agency and I said, they've never done a commercial before. So don't pretend that you know how to do a commercial if you've never done a commercial before, because it's a different process. And we had really fun discussions about the Nike swoosh in the beginning, because Odd asked, does it have to be that big? Because, I was like, well, first of all, they're paying for it, but also it's like, it's a commercial. and it also like validates, because now it's not just you making a documentary about this project, but it is like, it's endorsed by Nike, which also makes it something else. You know, it's just a different process. But but don't never pretend to be able to do something that you don't know, because people will see it and then think like, oh, that's bullshit. But just be. Yeah.
And if you do, like, if you need help, ask for it. Like, if you don't understand, I think that's really important. You know, like if you're like doubting, again, everybody's there to support you when you get the job, and before as well. Ooh, that's an interesting question as well, because, you know, the funny thing is, probably the rest of my life I will do some freebies. It really depends on the project. Sometimes I really feel it's necessary. And if my commercial jobs are on the low, there's so much to do, so I always keep on creating. Also because technology is changing, people are growing my thoughts, like, but if I'm working for a client that has no money, and I feel that I'm getting burned out or exhausted, I just said it's a boundary, it's a limit. If you want to have more feedback, for instance, or if this project is taking more that I can give right now, I also just say like, hey guys, put in so much, and now can we either arrange assistance or whatever. But when it's like coming down to free work, like probably I would do it till the day I die.
Tiwi?
You know I don't work for free.
I knew that answer.
Nice that we've got both sides there. This is good to hear.
No, I think it just depends where you are. Like at 29, when I didn't have any experience and I knew nothing, then I was willing to quit a full-time good salary and work for £60 a day. In that time, I made 3 music videos for free because I didn't have a clue, but I wanted someone to give me the experience. So I do think that there's a point when you're learning to take every opportunity, especially those opportunities that take you further, allow you to meet more people. But I do think at a point you have to start valuing what you contribute and have a kind of a point where you're like, actually, I can't do this for free, but we can negotiate on what that cost is, and I can give you a bit more than what you're asking for, so it feels like there's extra value. But we've all got to eat and pay our bills and pay for equipment, and there's, I believe, like enough money for people to contribute to your services.
Anything to add?
Money is not the only way to get paid for something. So first of all, I never work or ask anybody to work for free for a brand, for instance. But if it's like a documentary or a music video, it's different, already different. And or like if you can use it for your PR or your portfolio. So for instance, if you're a DP or an editor, you can probably put it on your website and use it to promote yourself again. And also like Nike, for instance, you know, it's like, I mean, I think it's ridiculous to work for free for Nike. It's the biggest company in the world. But you also do know that like, it will probably be seen by a lot of people. So you can still, yeah, so, so for instance, we stopped doing music videos for Dutch artists, basically, because I don't think that most Dutch artists will help elevate my directors anymore. I mean, like we did like 250 music videos here or something. But for instance, I did do a music video for Sef de Lisa for free. We even put in money in because I knew so many people had their eyes on Sef de Lisa, including like really big artists abroad, and doing that with that director got him on the table for the team at Madonna and then Beyonce, and then he became the creative director for Beyonce. So, you know, what I mean is like you have to be strategic about it. Okay. So if it's somebody that you really want to work with, if you think the work is going to be something that you can promote, then do it. But at some point, like if you have the skills, like you can also say like, look, I'm not going to do that for free. And it's also like if you can afford it, if you have that girlfriend or boyfriend that says you can sleep on the couch, or like I can pay the bills for a month for your mom or whatever. But if you can't afford it, then also, yeah, then also you can't do it at that time.
But I think Heis has a good point, just to add, it does depend on, I've always worked on commercials for brands, so I've never felt that I should give my work away for free, but docs and charities and other platforms are a different conversation. So I guess it also depends like what the project is.
Yeah, that was something that I wanted to add, not from I can't speak from a film perspective, but the value being other than money and things as well. Like we all have these skills we're accruing now as professionals, and if you can use those expertise to give back or create impact in something you believe in, then that can also be a value exchange in like I'm giving to something, I'm giving back, I'm paying it forward. But again, it's a privileged position to be able to do that sometimes. Like, have you got the capacity to be able to do that? And when you do, great. And when you don't, then yeah, these other considerations come in.
Okay, let's put it this way. Sometimes I'm shocked by the rates that some young people charge, and I'm really sorry. I'm just gonna say it like. Okay, film is yeah. This is so not inspirational. Okay, but it's very film is very hierarchical, and that's also for a reason. Like a director on the set is the boss of the set, and executive producer is the boss of all the producers. Then comes the producer, then comes the production manager, then comes the PA. Like, I mean, if you look at what TV and I did, we really started at the bottom. And when you're at the bottom, like you're the bottom part of solving this big problem, like this big thing. Production is a problem that needs to be solved. So that also means like if you see that the trash can is full, if I'm at a set now and I see that the trash can is full, I still empty the trash can, even though I own the company, I own the set. So what I'm trying to say is like sometimes young people, they're already like they have in the bio that they're a creative producer or something, and then I'm like, okay, but what did you produce? You know, like maybe 3 music videos and like a small documentary about your friends or something. That's fine, but you would not be able to produce a shoot for, let's say, a budget of 250,000 or something with a set with 50 people or something. And this is where that be humble thing comes in, like you know your place. I mean, of course, if you're like, you know, the most talented designer or DP or whatever, it can go really fast. But just, you know, some of the biggest directors or DPs that I know, they still have like kind of a a normalish day fee or something. So you can also ask the person that hires you, like, what do you have in your budget? It doesn't mean that you have to work on the set for 200 euros or something, but maybe it does, because maybe that's what the budget asks for. Like, and just ask around, like, what's your day fee like? How much experience do you have, or etc. You know, but it's like sometimes we run into things also now. A lot of people have their own equipment, for instance, right? And then they want to rent out their equipment. So why would we rent your equipment if we can rent the equipment from the equipment company, and then if the camera breaks or the lens is broken or whatever, then we can send somebody and find a replacement. You know, like, so many people are like, yeah, and I bring my set and I do this and then do that, and it just adds up, and it's great, but it's also your responsibility then, because you're renting out that stuff as well. So if that stuff breaks, like, what are you gonna do? You know what I mean? So I really think that these takeouts are quite important, and that prepare to be poor. That really sucks, because especially for people like I think a lot of people that take this program also, like, you don't really have the luxury to be poor. And even though I'm a white guy, I also didn't have that. My mother was a single mom, a secretary, and she also didn't have money to fund me. But it is really hard to make money as an artist in the beginning of your career, you know, like, you have to do so many things for free. But then, yeah, just work at McDonald's at night, or in a club in the weekend, or whatever, you know, like, but it's gonna take a long time to really make money. If you're a documentary director, maybe you make 30,000, sounds like a lot of money, but maybe you're working on that project for 4 years, and that's really the reality.
Yeah, I want to speak in here because you said, oh, this is so not inspiring. But I think that actually this is what, when you're starting out, you really want to hear that real talk and the real picture. You're the person that is often hiring and creating opportunities. And there is the reality, like, we've got to kind of navigate that dreaming big and following your passion and being creative and going out and knowing your worth with matching the reality of, like, so that you're not blocking yourself from getting in. So I think it's a great insight in that way.
In imposter syndrome, I had sweaty hands when I sat here this morning, and I still have imposter syndrome, because right now we're pitching on a job with an agency that's really hard to get into, and for the first time finally we get a chance to pitch on this crazy job that we really want, and we're pitching against the best production companies in the world, and still I feel like, oh my God, I hope we're gonna do it good. I hope we're gonna, you know, I mean, it's every day. Also, I don't know anything about finance, for instance, and I run this, like, my team is there. It's like, don't let Gijs say anything about money. It's because I will always say, like, sure we can do it, and then be like find people also, you know, like, I have partners in this company that are good at, you know, HR and finance and business, etc. You know, I'm, I guess, more good with people or something, you know.
Yeah. Thank you.
Don't try to do it alone. Well, that's film. It's never alone. Photography is different. That's very lonely.
When we spoke about this again, like, preparing for this event with those jobs that because we all agreed we quite liked those first jobs that we did. Like, I worked in a bar, or I was glass collecting. And actually, a great piece of advice that I was given out before becoming an entrepreneur was figure out what you need to be able to live, to just, like, pay your bills, and then, okay, a little bit so that you're, you know, not hating every day. So figure out what that amount is, and almost definitely you can earn that amount by working at a bar or working in a shop or whatever. So literally, that's the risk. Go and do what you want to do, and if you need to, pick up one of those jobs, and they're usually pretty nice jobs. We all liked.
And now, like, I think so many more creatives have skills. Like, I don't know how to use Photoshop. I don't know how to edit. I don't know how to do. I could barely put together that presentation. But, like, you can do your job in directing, and then on the side go on Upwork or Fiverr and, you know, charge 20 euros an hour to do whatever other, like, little skills that you have. So there are other opportunities for you to make money whilst you're pursuing your main dream.
Actually, also what I meant, like, if you're there's really a difference between like wanting to be a director or a photographer or a creative person and a producer, because I mean, production. I mean, you can find if you're a good producer and you put in the time, etc. Like you are gonna get paid. Don't worry. As a director, it's just a lot more difficult. I think that's a big difference. But let's face it, like it's also more fun to be a director and you get to make your vision, and we're here to basically pick up the shit.
It's full of inspiration.
Yeah, comes at a price. Yeah, and then okay, of course, if you make it big as a director and you have that, it's like being a football player. So many football players can't live off it, and you can only live off it for maybe 7 years or something. You have a yeah, but it's true what you said. Like don't you know? I always made sure that I don't. If I can, that I always thought I could stop doing this job tomorrow because I don't have an expensive house, I don't have a car, I don't have a lot of things that cost money always. You know, like so I could, yeah.
Yeah,
I
it's
could
doable
literally
if
stop
it
tomorrow.
needs. Yeah, takes the pressure off.
Yeah.
Well, when I look at my own collaboration, it really depends. Like I always meet the musicians. Like I really like sound is such an important base of me telling stories, right? So like I walk around, put reference, but most of the musicians I work with, they do both actually, and it's really coming down to getting to know directors, but also, you know, people put your portfolio out and really co-create. What I like about the longer projects, so I've got 2 documentaries more than an hour, is there's so much more time to go into depth, you know, and this is what I really like about it. But I guess for your workflow, it shouldn't be big of a difference. It's just more about getting out there, going to network, sharing your music with directors, and I think you're already doing that. So yeah, I don't know, how about you guys? You see?
No, I think the same for musicians as, for instance, for writers. So we sometimes hire writers here that work on advertising. They make a lot of money, and then they say, hey, you also have a documentary department. I would love to write for that. And I'm like, okay, good, but you make maybe in the commercial department, you make maybe 600 a day, and then maybe in the documentary department, you make 150 a day or 200 a day. It's just a different thing. And then they're like, ooh, it's like, yeah, well, what do you think? Like, you know, I mean, we make commercials 30 seconds for the same amount of money as we do entire feature films sometimes. It's mental. So it's not just it's also the fact that yeah, there's just less money in those things and it takes a lot longer, etc. But in a way, I think it shouldn't be harder, but you have to, like, you know, see, okay, what directors do I like, what projects have they done, and then try to approach them. And also, if you send them an email and you don't get an answer, then you send them an email again and again and again, and then you start stalking them, and you find out where they buy their croissantjes, and then you're hang out there. Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, you know, like I do that still, yeah. And it's like.
So if you ever see guys at the croissant shop, be like, who are you looking at, guys?
Ooh, I found that a hard question, but I think for me what I really like about this time as a maker is that you can create a lot of things. You can do a lot of things yourself, so you can, again, explore yourself also and just put it out there. I mean, lots of youngsters know editing, filming. I'm a DP on the side as well. I can do editing, and this brought me so much closer to my identity and also getting my work out there, and then now it brought me here. So I think that's a beautiful thing to do and keep on doing it, like dive into different parts so that once you're in a position of directing, in my case, you know what you're talking about and you know what you want.
So exactly what Ott said. So the multidisciplinary thing is crazy. Like when we started at HALAL with directors, they couldn't edit, they couldn't film, they could only do that. So they always needed a lot of people to make anything. This is also why directors are so often nicer people than photographers, because they need a lot of people to fulfill their dream. And a photographer can just go out by themselves. So you don't have to be so collaborative. Though, I mean, is this being recorded? Oh. So original is like, if you copy what other people are doing all the time, it's like, yeah, okay, that also shows that you have skill or something, but at some point, like, that's gonna, yeah, be out of fashion. Like, I mean, you really have to try to find your own voice, even if it is lo-fi. Personality, don't be an asshole. Unheard voices, like for a lot of people in this room, that's your advantage, you know? Like, I mean, how cringe is it if like a heterosexual 50-year-old guy has to do a pride campaign for TikTok for a brand, you know? I mean, it is really, really cringe. So the fact that you have your own experience and you can tell your stories because of, you know, where you're from or maybe the religion that you have or whatever, that basically means that you have another story to tell. You can connect to people in your film in a completely different way. And this is what's lacking a lot with young makers, especially because of course it goes back to like 6-second films, etc. But it's like, you know, try to tell a story, even if you're doing like a fashion film or music video, you know, try to tell a story like, you know, I mean, the most fun music videos are like where there is an arch and, you know, a development in character, etc. On the other hand, old people suck at making social media campaigns in 6 seconds. If you can tell a story in 6 seconds or 5 times 6 seconds, even better, you know?
Anything to add, Dewey?
What was the original question about innovation coming up?
Yeah, so if people are coming through now, what are the things you see that maybe they should be aware of?
I don't know, I find that a really hard question because I think even though technology changes, like the essence of the job is the same. And it's, at least as a producer, it's like a people-centered job. It's like, I never went to film school. I can't claim to have like a massive fascination with film, but I like putting teams together. I like starting with something, shaping a creative and ending with something. And so all I would just say is that, yeah, look at what you like to do. What is your film about? What is your process about? And how do you get enjoyment? And then find things that fit that. But I don't think that changes. That's a constant throughout your career. And of course, as technology develops, I think it's important to continuously upskill and to continuously learn, especially in the digital age, because it is so fast paced. But yeah, just follow the parts and the essence of the things that you like and they will stay with you.
Thank you. Okay, well, landing on that golden nugget, I'd love to say some thank yous, first of all, to our fabulous panelists. A big round of applause for our panelists. We have another gift still for you all. So as all our brilliant panelists have been talking, our Roots In team have been capturing the recommendations that they've given. So places to look at, read, watch. We'll even supplement that a bit more. So you basically have like a digital goodie bag, like resources that you will all get and everybody watching online is able to access as well, to all focused on helping you break in. We also have the next event like this coming up in May. This one is going to be focused on roots into the music industry. So if you'd like to come along to that, or you've got friends who would like to break into the music industry. So if you want to have updates on the other events or initiatives, because there's a lot going on with Roots In that we're doing to create access, then follow us on our socials. One of the things that you can get engaged in is that we have a mentorship program across Europe, so you can join as a mentee or as a mentor. So big thank you to them. And to the Roots In team, we're all dotted around, give a wave, who made this happen, especially Isne. And to HALAL for hosting us. Thank you so much for making this happen. And to all of you for being a brilliant audience. Thank you.